Work Platforms and Scaffolding, Section 22. Work Platforms and Scaffolding. General Provisions. This section establishes safety requirements for the construction, operation, maintenance, and use of work platforms and scaffolding used in construction, alteration, demolition operations, and maintenance of buildings and other structures. Scaffolding and work platforms shall be erected, used, inspected, tested, maintained, and repaired in accordance with, for non-mechanized equipment, ANSI A 10.8 Scaffolding Safety Requirements, or the Scaffolding, Shoring, and Forming Institute's Code of Safe Practices and the Manufacturer's Operating Manual. For mechanized equipment, a copy of the manufacturer's operating manual, which shall be available at the worksite. Mechanized equipment includes adjustable scaffolds, elevating aerial work platforms, vehicle-mounted elevating and rotating work platforms, mast climbing systems, and forklift-mounted work platforms. The references for this section are EM 385, TAC 1, TAC 1, Section 22, OSHA 29 CFR 1926.450, Subpart L, UFGS 013526, the latest edition, and ANSI ASSE A 10.8 2011 edition. What is a scaffold? It is an elevated temporary work platform. There are three basic types: supported scaffolds, platforms supported by rigid load-bearing members such as poles, legs, frames, and outriggers; suspended scaffolds, platforms suspended by ropes or other non-rigid overhead support; and aerial lifts such as cherry pickers or boom trucks. General provisions. Prior to commencing any activity that requires work in elevated areas, all provisions for access and fall protection shall be delineated in the site-specific fall protection and prevention plan and the activity hazard analysis per Section 21D, and accepted by the GDA for the activity. Hierarchy and prohibitions. The following hierarchy and prohibitions shall be followed in selecting the appropriate work platforms. Scaffolds, platforms, or temporary floors shall be provided for all work except that can be performed safely from the ground or similar footing. Ladders may be used as work platforms only when use of small hand tools or handling of light materials is involved. Ladder jacks, lean-to, and prop scaffolds are prohibited. Emergency descent devices shall not be used as working platforms. Activity hazard analysis. An AHA shall be prepared by the contractor performing the work and submitted to the GDA prior to erection. The AHA will address all of the following elements: site conditions, i.e. ground conditions, overhead utilities, etc., identity of the specific type of scaffolding to be used, scaffold dimensions to include height, width, depth, and length, load calculation for the anticipated workload and wind loading, the name of the competent person for scaffolding, and the method of marking or barricading to be used per Section 22.B.18. The erection, moving, dismantling, or altering of work platforms shall be under the supervision of a competent person. Daily documented pre-shift inspections by a competent person of all scaffolds in use at that time. The competent person shall have a minimum of 8 hours scaffold training covering the specific types of scaffolding used, the scaffold basing, load calculations, and erection and dismantling. Scaffold inspections and tags. When scaffolds are in use, they will be inspected daily by the competent person prior to each shift. The inspection will be recorded on the daily safety inspection required by Section 01A.13 and on the scaffold tag. Scaffold tags will include the name and signature of the competent person, date of the initial inspection, dates of the daily inspections, and be visible and legible and water resistant. Include wording on whether the scaffold is complete and safe for use or incomplete and either not ready for use or is unsafe. Scaffolding that has been hoisted after configuration or assembly will be re-inspected by a competent person, both before initial use and after each additional hoisting. This inspection will be documented on the scaffold inspection tag. Anyone involved in erecting, disassembling, moving, operating, using, repairing, maintaining, or inspecting a scaffold shall be trained by a competent person to recognize any hazards associated with the work in question. Proof of training shall be available upon request. Vehicle operations near scaffolds. When vehicles or mobile equipment are used near scaffolding, substantial stop logs or barricades shall be installed. The use of a ground guide is recommended for this equipment. However, if it is demonstrated that barricades are not feasible or are not required based on distance, a ground guide shall be used. Ground guides will not be exposed to potential falling objects. Hanging scaffolds are exempt unless the competent person determines that vehicles and mobile equipment could pose a hazard to safe operation. Fall protection for erectors and dismantlers of scaffold. For workers erecting and dismantling scaffolds, an evaluation shall be conducted by a competent person for fall protection to determine the feasibility and safety of providing fall protection. If fall protection is not feasible, an AHA detailing a rationale for infeasibility of use of fall protection shall be submitted and accepted by the GDA. Clearances. Work platforms shall not be erected or used in the immediate vicinity of power lines or electrical conductors until such are insulated, de-energized, or otherwise rendered safe against accidental contact. Capacity. Scaffolds and their components shall meet the requirements contained in ANSI A 10.8 and be capable of supporting without failure at least 4 times the maximum anticipated load. Direct connections to roofs and floors and counterweights used to balance adjustable suspension scaffolds shall be capable of resisting at least 4 times the tipping moment imposed by the scaffold operating at the rated load of the hoist, or 1.5 times minimum the tipping moment imposed by the scaffold operating at the stall load of the hoist, whichever is greater. Design. Factory fabricated scaffolds and components shall be designed and fabricated in accordance with the applicable ANSI standard. When there is a conflict between the ANSI standard and this manual concerning the design or fabrication of factory fabricated scaffolds, the ANSI standard shall prevail. When scaffolds are wrapped with tarps, poly enclosures, or similar materials, wind calculations will be calculated by a qualified person to determine the strength and placement of the ties. When scaffolds are to be partially or fully enclosed, a qualified person shall verify the adequacy of the number, the placement, and the strength of ties attaching the scaffold to the structure, taking into consideration wind loads and weather. Supports. Supporting members and foundations shall be of sufficient size and strength to safely distribute loading. They shall be placed on a firm, smooth foundation that will prevent lateral displacement. Unstable objects. Unstable objects such as barrels, boxes, loose bricks, or concrete blocks shall not be used as supports. Plumb and braced. Vertical members, i.e. poles, legs, or uprights, shall be plumb and securely braced to prevent swaying or displacement. Scaffolds shall be plumb and level unless designed by a registered professional engineer to contour as the structure does. Base supports. Scaffolds, other than suspended scaffolds, shall bear on base plates upon mud sills or other adequate foundation. Planking. Working levels of work platforms shall be fully planked or decked. Planking grades. All wood planking shall be selected for scaffold plank use as recognized by grading rules established by a recognized independent inspection agency for the species of wood used. Planking. Fabricated planks and platforms may be used in lieu of solid sawn wood planks. Maximum spans for such units shall be as recommended by the manufacturer. Planking shall be secured to prevent loosening, tipping, or displacement, and supported or braced to prevent excessive spring or deflection. Planking overlaps. When planking is lapped in a long run, each plank shall lap its supports by at least 12 inches. Scaffold planks shall extend over their end supports not less than 6 inches unless the planking is manufactured with restraining hooks or equivalent means of preventing movement, nor more than 12 inches. Securing platforms. Work surfaces shall be properly lapped or securely fastened to the scaffold. Platform distances. The front edge of all platforms shall not be more than 14 inches from the face of the work unless guardrail systems are erected along the front edge and/or personal fall arrest systems are used. The maximum distance from the face for plastering and lathing operations is 18 inches. Access. An access ladder or equivalent safe access shall be provided. Where a built-in ladder is part of a scaffolding system, it shall conform to the requirements for ladders. Climbing on braces. Climbing of braces shall be prohibited. End frames used as ladders. When hook-on or attachable ladders are used on a supported scaffold more than 20 feet in height, they shall have rest platforms every 20 feet or fall protection will be used. If scaffold platforms are used as rest platforms, they will be arranged so that the climber must exit to a platform before climbing the next section of the ladder. When end frames are used for access, they will conform to the ladder standard and not exceed 20 feet without fall protection. Access gates. Ladder access points shall be protected by an inward swinging gate or chain guard. Other authorized scaffolds. The use of the following types of scaffolding are permitted if they are designed and constructed in accordance with ANSI A 10.8. This slide illustrates an example of an outrigger scaffold and a needle beam scaffold. This slide shows an interior hung scaffold and a bricklayer's square scaffold. Illustrated here is a float or ship scaffold and a bosun's scaffold. Window jack scaffolds and carpenter's bracket scaffolds and form scaffolds. Metal scaffolds and towers. Scaffold components made of dissimilar metals shall not be used together unless a competent person has determined that the galvanic action will not reduce the strength of any component to a level below that required by section 22B.08. Tube and coupler scaffolds. Tube and coupler scaffolds shall have posts, runners, and bracing of outside nominal, 2-inch outside diameter, steel tubing or pipe. Other structural metals, when used, must be designed to carry an equivalent load. All tube and coupler scaffolds shall be constructed to support 4 times the maximum intended loads as set forth by ANSI A 10.8 or as specified by a registered professional engineer with knowledge in structural design. Metal frame scaffolds. Scaffolds shall be properly braced by cross, horizontal, or diagonal braces or combination of these to secure vertical members together laterally. Cross braces shall be of such length and will automatically square and align vertical members so the scaffold is plumb, square, and rigid. All brace connections shall be made secure. Frames shall be placed one on top of the other with coupling or stacking pins to provide vertical alignment of the legs. Where uplift may occur, panels shall be locked together vertically by pins or other equivalent suitable means. Manually propelled mobile scaffolds includes mobile work stands such as Baker scaffolds. All wheels and casters on rolling scaffolds shall have a positive locking device securely fastened to the scaffold to prevent accidental movement. All casters and wheels shall be locked when the scaffold is occupied. Freestanding mobile scaffold working platform heights shall not exceed 3 times the smallest base dimension. Rolling scaffolds shall be used only on firm, level, and clean surfaces. Wood pole scaffolds. They are rarely seen and refer to 29 CFR 1926.452A for the requirements for wood pole scaffolds. Suspended scaffolds. Suspended scaffolds are scaffolds or work platforms that are suspended from anchorage points, hoists that allow the scaffold to move up and down as needed for the work to be performed. Suspended scaffolds shall be designed, constructed, operated, inspected, tested, and maintained as specified in the operating manual for the device. Suspended scaffold inspection. Before the scaffold is used, direct connections shall be evaluated by a competent person who shall confirm, based on the evaluation, that the supporting surfaces are capable of supporting the loads imposed. Each hoist shall be inspected by a competent person before use, after every installation and re-rigging in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications. A trial operation will be done by the operator alone after every installation. Connection and anchorage systems of suspended scaffold shall be inspected at the beginning of each shift. Only personnel trained in the use of suspended work platforms shall be authorized to operate it. Anyone involved in erecting, disassembling, moving, operating, using, repairing, maintaining, or inspecting a suspended scaffold shall be trained by a competent person to recognize any hazards associated with the work in question. Proof of training shall be maintained on-site and made available to the GDA upon request. 2-point suspension scaffolds. 2-point suspension scaffold platforms shall be not less than 20 inches or more than 36 inches wide. Hanging scaffolds. A hanging scaffold is a scaffold work platform that is hung from a location, such as a wall or lock gate, for work to be performed, and that remains stationary until it is then repositioned with a crane or hoisting device. Hanging scaffolds shall be designed by a registered professional engineer competent in structural design. Form and Carpenter bracket scaffolds. A guardrail or other form of fall protection is required for all open edges when a fall of 6 feet or greater exists, or when other hazards exist below the platform. Clip-on or hook-over brackets may be used on form work provided the form wailers are bolted to the form or secured by snap ties or tie bolts extending through the form and securely anchored. In addition, Carpenter bracket scaffolds may be attached by a bolt extending through to the opposite side of the structural wall, a metal stud attachment device, welding, or hooking over a secured structural supporting member. Horse scaffolds. Horse scaffolds shall not be constructed or arranged more than 2 tiers or 10 feet in height. Scaffolds shall be 5 feet or less in height and 5 feet or more in width. When tiered height exceeds 6 feet, fall protection shall be used. Pump jack scaffolds shall be designed for a minimum working load of 500 pounds and not more than 2 workers shall be allowed on the scaffold at any one time. Pump jack brackets, braces, and accessories shall be fabricated from metal plates and angles and installed in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations. Wood poles shall not exceed 30 feet in height, or metal poles shall not exceed 50 feet in height. Adjustable scaffolds. Adjustable scaffolds shall be designed and constructed in accordance with ANSI or SIA A10.8. Crane load handling equipment supported personnel work platforms. See section 16.T. Elevated aerial work platforms or AWPS. All elevating aerial work platforms shall be designed and constructed in accordance with either ANSI SIA A92.3, ANSI SIA A92.5, and ANSI SIA A92.6 as appropriate. Elevated aerial work platforms shall be operated, inspected, and maintained per the operating manual. AWPs shall comply with the requirements of this section and Section 18.G. Records of inspections conducted while the unit is at the worksite shall be maintained at the worksite. Height to base ratio of the scaffold during movement is 2:1 or less per the manufacturer's instructions. All elevating aerial work platforms shall have the manufacturer's operating manual readily available on the equipment. Aerial work platforms will not be operated unless the access door or chains are secured in the closed position. Fall protection shall be used in accordance with Section 21.K of this manual, and climbing of the rails is prohibited. All aerial work platform operators shall have training that includes both general as well as equipment-specific familiarization before being allowed to operate this equipment. The training shall be documented. Before operating the aerial work platform, the operator shall survey the work area for loose or soft ground, ditches, drop-offs or holes, bumps and floor obstructions, debris, overhead obstructions, ground and elevated energy sources, and other possible hazards. Ensure the aerial work platform is on a firm, level surface. Ensure the aerial work platform is loaded in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications. Ensure that outriggers and/or stabilizers are used if required by the manufacturer. Ensure that, if the vehicle is on wheels, the wheels are locked or chocked, and ensure that the fall restraint system is connected. Aerial work platforms shall only be operated from the ground position in an emergency or rescue operation, for maintenance or when unoccupied. Lift controls will be located below the guardrail height. When lift controls are not located below the guardrail height, an aftermarket guard will be installed. Vehicle-mounted elevating and rotating work platforms. Only personnel trained in the use of the vehicle-mounted elevating and rotating work platform shall be authorized to operate it. Transporting and moving of vehicle-mounted elevated and rotating work platforms. Aerial lift trucks, to include cherry pickers, shall not be moved when the boom is elevated in a working position with personnel in the basket, except for equipment that is specifically designed for this type of operation. When manufacturers allow mobile operation, the work site shall be inspected for untamped earth fills, i.e. soft ground, ditches, drop-offs and floor obstructions, debris, overhead obstructions and electrical conductors, weather conditions, and the presence of unauthorized persons. Operating practices. The manufacturer's instruction for control station operation must be followed. For example, primary versus secondary or upper versus lower control stations. Lift controls will be located below the guardrail height. When lift controls are not located below the guardrail height, an aftermarket guard will be installed. Lower level controls shall not be operated unless permission has been obtained from the employee in the lift, except in the case of emergency. This practice shall be documented in the applicable activity hazard analysis. This slide shows an example of various mast climbing and work platforms. Mast climbing work platforms shall be erected, used, inspected, tested, maintained, and repaired in accordance with ANSI A92.9 and the IPAF SAIA Safe Use Guidelines for mast climbing work platforms, and the manufacturer's recommendations as outlined in the operating manual. A pre-use inspection will be performed prior to erecting the work platform according to the requirements set out in the IPAF SAIA and the Operator's Manual. An overhead inspection will be done to ensure that the work platform will not come in contact with any obstructions while moving up or down the mast. Special attention will be given to high voltage conductors. Once the voltage of the line is established, the minimum safe approach distance in Table 11-1 will be used. Only designated trained users shall be designated to operate the mast climbing work platform. Training records shall be maintained for at least 3 years and maintained on site. All personnel on the platform shall be trained per section 22.N.15. Climbing of braces and guardrails is prohibited. When access ladders, including masts designed as ladders, exceed 20 feet in height, positive fall protection shall be used. All access gates shall either close automatically or be electronically interlocked to prevent operation of the work platform unless they are closed. Chains or ropes shall not be used as access gates. Prior to use at elevations of 20 feet or more, an emergency egress plan will be developed to evacuate workers from a platform that gets caught in an elevated position 20 feet or more above the ground. If that plan includes descending the mast, all employees working on the platform will be provided fall arrest equipment and will be trained in its use. Roofing brackets. Roofing brackets shall be secured by nailing in addition to the pointed metal projections. Nails will be driven into a rafter or beam, not just into the decking. Fasteners will be selected in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations. Turbine maintenance platforms, or TMPs. A TMP is a type of scaffold unique to hydropower operations and maintenance that incorporates aspects of both suspended scaffolds and hanging scaffolds. These TMPs are assembled in the draft down tube below the turbine where they are physically attached to the structure. Some TMPs must be assembled below the turbine at the draft tube door level and raised into position, and may also be required to be close to the turbine blades such that the TMP must wrap around the turbine hub. This applies to vertical access turbines where the TMP is assembled under the runner. Note, this section does not apply to standard off-the-shelf applications of scaffolds designed and used in accordance with ANSI A 10.3. Forklift or powered industrial truck mounted work platforms. Forklifts, powered industrial trucks, will not be used to support work platforms unless there is no other practical method. If a rough terrain forklift must be used, all the conditions in this section must be met. There are 22 additional requirements that must be met if using this type of equipment to lift the personnel. Please refer to EM 385, Section 22. Work stands, or portable work platforms. Work stands shall be designed in accordance with either ANSI A 14.2 aluminum or ANSI A 14.5 plastic or fiberglass. Work stands shall not have a work height exceeding 4 feet. A load rating shall be clearly and legibly marked, and the work stand shall not be loaded beyond the manufacturer's rated capacity. The maximum intended load includes the worker and all tools and supplies. When work stands are used near stairs or ramps where a fall to a different level could occur, guardrails per section 21F.01b or other fall protection shall be provided, increased in height by an amount equal to the height of the work stand, section 21.A.04. Work stands shall be inspected for visible defects on a daily basis and shall be maintained with no structural damage. Job-built work stands are not allowed. Sawhorses shall not be used as work stands. Trestle ladder scaffolds. Scaffold platforms must be placed no higher than the second highest rung or step of the ladder supporting the platform. All ladders used in step, platform, and trestle ladder scaffolds must meet or exceed 29 CFR 1926 subpart X, except that job-made ladders are not permitted. Be prevented from slipping by how they are placed, fastened, or equipped. In summary, remember to use appropriate scaffold construction methods, erect, move, or alter scaffolds properly, protect from falling objects or tools, ensure stable access, use a competent person, train on scaffold construction and the hazards involved with scaffolds, inspect the scaffold before each shift and after alterations, and determine the fall protection requirements.